Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for an episode today about Dele Alli, about his recent interview with Gary Neville. It's a really heavy topic, but there's just so much to talk about and there's so many implications towards performance. I know this interview was probably a few weeks ago now. I've been a bit busy, but I really wanted to talk about this specific thing. It might not be so relevant now, but I think the topics within it are massively relevant, especially for a podcast like this talking about psychology and performance and football. There couldn't be anything more applicable than Dele Alli in this situation, this interview. For those who haven't seen this interview, definitely go watch it first of all, but just to kind of give a summary of the main topics of it, really Dele Alli giving an explanation for his kind of downward trend since 2017, 2018, not really aspiring to the heights of the football player that everyone anticipated that he would be, somewhat dropping off really, and him giving his explanation for that, things that happened in his childhood, past traumas, things that have kind of been relevant throughout his adult life, through his football career as well. Really just give an explanation for everything that's been happening. I think first off, I am guilty, as well as many people really, of jumping to conclusions, I think, about Dele Alli and his character and his attitude towards football. I think a lot of people initially really frustrated with Dele Alli, looking at the situation as if it's someone who's not really taking the opportunity of being a top football player. He's been, as they talked about in the interview, labelled with the stigma of being lazy. Talked about that with the Spurs All or Nothing documentary, and that coming from Jose Mourinho, and that being taken out of context also, but that's really the label that's been put on Dele Alli. I think my first takeaway from watching an interview like that is that we don't have a clue. We don't have a clue what is going on in football at all, and especially with the people that are working and that are playing within it as well. We as fans, as experts in whatever we're talking about, like myself with psychology, you can only really speculate on what's going on. And when I talk about football, I really do speculate on what the situations may be, definitely what the results are and things like that. It really is speculation because we have no clue what's going on behind the scenes, especially when it comes to that media bias. It's always there. You never really get that clear picture of that person. As I've kind of talked about before on this, you usually get a stereotypical caricature of what that person is actually like, and even then that is somewhat distorted based on narratives and stories and things that are going to get clicks and sell newspapers. It's all distorted in a way, and our vision of these people and their performances and who they are is massively distorted. And if anything, this case of Dele Alli is really that. The realities of the situations distorted, completely taken out of everything. A completely different picture is painted of Dele Alli, and in just an interview like that, that illusion is just broken straight away, and you see that real person there, and you see the real logical reason as to why that person is in the place that they are. And watching that interview myself, it was a realization of that makes perfect sense as to why this has all happened, and whatever we were hearing before was just nothing, just absolute nonsense. And I think, as Dele Alli said in the interview as well, there's just so much that is made up. And that is the reality of the media and football media and media in general, I guess. There's so much of it that is made up. Another point that I take away from it is that I think when people look at football from the outside, it seems like the absolute peak. Everybody want to play football. Why wouldn't you want to play football? Why wouldn't you want to be a part of football? That's the absolute dream, and it is the dream for a lot of people. But the realities are so different, like I said, from the external view. The realities on the inside, like Dele Alli talked about, there's so many problems still within it, and there's still stresses that come with it. There's still pressures that come with it. Yes, when you're a player and you perform at that high level, it's fantastic that you make so much money, but that's money only makes up for so much. An interview like that kind of shows that. How much money can Dele Alli earn for him to really get through the things that he's dealt with and be a happier, healthier, better person? Being a footballer isn't the solution for that, and it's not the solution really for anybody. I know this is kind of mad, but talk to a lot of people that work in football, behind the scenes in football. I can't think of anyone that I've talked to who's really said they've enjoyed working in football. I think everyone kind of doesn't like working in football, but they also want to be a part of it because it's such a big thing. But then to deal with the side effects of that, especially for those people that work behind the scenes, it's really difficult. It's not that straightforward, and it's not that fantastic either. There's another thing that I took away from that interview also with Dele Alli. I have to be careful with this because I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. There's some levels to psychology and someone's well-being. I'm not really qualified as a sports psychologist to diagnose and talk about and things like that, but there's one thing I do want to acknowledge, and that is that I think there's this belief sometimes, it's definitely an old belief, that performance is just about the person performing on the pitch or whatever it is. And an athlete is that one thing on the pitch and then the one thing off the pitch as well. And those two things are completely different, and that does not have an impact on that, and that does not have an impact on that. But it definitely does. Performance, we have to look at this whole holistic thing. And you can see that from Dele Alli, is the effect on his performance, the effect on the development of his career was one that was caused by serious psychological problems from things that he had experienced in his past. And that had a massive implication on performance. And that is where psychology and specifically with this, care for players, care for athletes, care for people in general, outside of the football, the pitch, the playing, whatever that is massively important. Not because it's ethically right to take care of those people, but because that has a massive implication on performance itself. And it helps those people to develop, to do a good job, to develop into top players and athletes. I'd like to think we're heading towards a future where we can understand properly that performance comes from that healthy foundation, being psychologically sound, being psychologically healthy, being taken care of, being solid in yourself, really, in a lot of ways. That foundation leads to the best performance you can possibly have, and that needs to be understood even more, because it feels like, and it definitely has been in the past, it's probably still somewhat the case today, that stuff needs to be sacrificed to get the best out of yourself. You need to sacrifice these things. You make sacrifices to family, to friends, to support, to get the best out of yourself. And there is some truth in that. There are sacrifices that you have to make, but those foundations of being okay and being comfortable, and what we call environments being psychologically safe as well, they have massive implications on how a person performs for 90 plus minutes on a pitch. And the more that is understood and embraced, the better football gets, the better performances get, better everything as a whole holistically gets as well. I think that's probably the best way I could summarize everything I thought about that situation, about Dele Alli and what he's going through. And it seems to be the case that he's managed to move on somewhat from what has happened, and he's found some tools from the things that he's gone and done to go forward with. And I'd like to hope that he'll have that development more so in his career now and get back to the player maybe he was before. But if not, just the main priority, as I would advise with any athlete really, is to look after yourself, to make sure you're psychologically sound and healthy, and mentally healthy, everything like that. That's probably really the main priority, more so than I hope Dele Alli comes back and is a top Premier League player again. I don't think that really matters in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening. What do you think about Dele Alli? What do you think about that interview and the contents of it, and what it really means for things around psychology, but also around football itself, and what football can do that's better to support these athletes, and with that to help them get better performances on the pitch as well. So yeah, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you again next week.